Alrighty. Hello everyone, my name is Velikan, and welcome to my Leagues IV deep dive. This is the fourth video that I've made. I've made three other videos. All of them had wrong information ultimately because Jagex kept teasing and changing up relics up to yesterday actually. Right now it is 10 minutes before Leagues IV release. Um, this video is going to be way longer than 10 minutes, but hopefully you'll be watching this when you're, I don't know, AFK mining, AFK fishing, who knows. So, let's get started, shall we? So what is this guide? I would like to find synergies between mostly combat relics and areas. I will be taking a look at all the relics, all 8 tiers, and give you my opinion about them. I would like to present some paths that you can take as a player. You could argue that has been the main focus of the past 3 videos and will be the main focus of this video. Keep in mind though, it is intended for the average player. If you are a RuneScape expert, you know exactly what you're doing. You have figured out all the items, all the routes that you can take, all the areas that you can go to, all the tasks that you can do. Then maybe this video is not for you. However, I will be presenting my opinion about things, and maybe I can shift your opinion about things. Who knows? Jagex has made a decision to give us a 5x drop rate. That will make Leagues IV more accessible for everyone. I'm specifically talking about the mega rares. Drop rates for T-Bow, Inquisitor, items like that were actually still pretty difficult to grind out. And I think lots of players don't quite understand what a 1 in 200 drop rate for Inquisitor would have meant. And then going dry for maybe 500 KC. However, I've said this now once, because of the 5x drop rate, I'm just not going to mention and keep mentioning the bad drop rates on mega rares every time I talk about mega rares. So keep that in mind. So I will be, for instance, talking about T-Bow. And the drop rate for T-Bow is something you're going to have to calculate yourself. You're going to have to look it up, do your own research a little bit. And then you decide if you want to make that grind work for you. So let's say, I think in the main game, it's safe to assume T-Bow is something like 1 in 1k. With the 5x, it will be 1 in 200. Accounting for probability, you might go 300, 400 KC dry. Are you willing to do 400 Chambers of Xerix in leagues, right? So that's the way you have to think about things. Either way, let's continue. What is this not? This is not a Dragon Cup guide. I will not be weighing area tasks and point weight for these tasks. I think you should weigh those, to be honest. I will be talking about the areas briefly. However, I will not be giving you a complete overview of all the activities in all the areas. That will take too much time. All of that information is on the wiki. The wiki is probably exhaustive, whereas my videos are not. My videos might be exhausting, but not exhaustive. I will not be explaining what Leagues exactly entails. You know, the boosted drop rate, the boosted experience, yada yada. And I won't be talking about Leagues rewards at all. So, I made 3 videos before this one. And all of them were meant to present you as a player some routes that you can take, whether or not you're going melee relic, ranged relic, or magic relic. I've been, well, not wrong, essentially. Jagex basically has dropping bombs on us, and the biggest bomb that they dropped was changing 5-tick weapons to be considered as 4-tick, basically. What I'm saying is, where 4-tick weapons become 2-tick weapons in leagues, 5-tick weapons also become 2-tick weapons. And that changes a lot. Not everything, but a lot. That's basically one of the reasons I had to redo this video for the 4th time. However, this video will be taking a look into some DPS calculations, Piety, all sorts of stuff that I think is necessary for you to form an opinion about everything. However, please read the description, the comments, watch other videos. Don't try to hold me accountable. I'm trying my best here. However, when you're saying like, oh, you missed this, sure, I can miss things. That's, you know, I'm just one guy. I don't have a team. So keep that in mind, please, please, please. Also, it's quite difficult to do the same video over and over and over again. I have to like find a balance between the length of a video and just talking and talking and talking, which is something I like to do. If it were up to me, I just keep rambling about topics that don't really matter. So I try to consolidate information. However, when I'm consolidating information, I might omit some information that's actually quite useful. So what I'm trying to say is basically I may miss things. That's just how it is. I very much appreciate people actually when they're in the comments saying like, hey, bro, you missed a certain weapon or item, or that you should really consider. Because usually what I tend to do, I either pin these comments, but you can only pin one. So I tend to love these comments. YouTube has this loving thing that you can do. You can love comments. And then I just tell people to also read the comments, because there's a lot of useful information in there. Either way, I think I've said what I wanted to say. Some resources. Essentially, the Google Docs is the one you need. From there, you can find DPS calculators. From there, you can find the Discord, and of course the wiki. The wiki is super useful, especially right now because I think it's exhaustive. Jagex works together with the guys from the wiki to get everything up there. And one special mention is the Discord, Leagues IV Discord. There are so many people talking and talking and talking, and if you have very specific questions, you can just ask them there. And if you don't get an answer, just say something that's wrong, and someone will be compelled to correct you. That's a pro tip in life. Either way. Oh, by the way, I didn't mean to diss the Discord guys. They are actually great. It's not like they're assholes or anything. Before we begin, there's a couple of things that I would like to talk about. The first thing is all players begin their journey with access to Misthalin and Karamja. This hasn't changed. I've had people tell me that you start in Zeya or Kurend, however you want to call it. This is not true, at least if I am supposed to believe the wiki. You unlock a maximum of 3 other areas, not 4 or 5, just 3. That's something you should know. Like I said, I'm not going to be explaining the entire premise of the leagues. However, this is very valuable information. So the 5x drop rates, I talked about this very shortly. I'm not going to be talking about the drop rates throughout the entire video. You should still consider them, definitely. I'll give you one example. I did one example with the T-bow from the top of my head, but this one is about the Bowfa, or the Blade of Saeldor. It's a 1 in 400 in the main game from Corrupted Gauntlet. In leagues, it will be 5 in 400, which means 1 in 80. In terms of probability, you may still go 200 KC dry. That's just how probability works. Do you want to do 200 Corrupted Gauntlet KC in leagues? Keep in mind, though, it's probably a lot easier and faster in leagues, but still. If it's my call, I'm just telling you, just look up the drop rates yourself. It's your responsibility. It's your journey, not mine. If you don't quite understand probability, the chance of you getting an item if you go on drop rate is about 63%. So you have a 63% chance if you do 80 Corrupted Gauntlet kills, right, in leagues. If you go double drop rate, your chance of getting the item is... sorry, did I say 86? Basically what I said is 63 if you go on drop rate. If you go double drop rate, it's 86, right? That's what I meant to say, at least. If you don't quite understand what these percentages mean, I think you need to factor about a 1.4 times the drop rate, which accounts for 75% probability for any item, which I think is a fair assumption. So that means if you don't want to do the 1.4x the drop rate in a temporary game mode, consider a different route. So if you have an item that is like a 1 in 200 drop, you have to 1.4x it. and then think to yourself like, hey, do I want to do like this many KC on this boss, for instance? And if the answer is yes, then by all means go for it. And if the answer is no, I think you really have to scratch your head a little bit. Bandos has been a very notorious boss. Everyone thought they would love killing Bandos, you know, increased drop rates, you're going to get your tacits and your chest plate easy. However, green logging Bandos, excluding the pet of course, would have cost you about 500, 600 KC in leagues. That's quite a lot. Either way, I said what I wanted to say. Let's continue. And then, of course, Last Recall. Last Recall is gone. It's now called the Crystal of Memories. It's available to everyone, and it starts off with a 6-minute cooldown. The cooldown is reduced by 1 minute for every 300 total levels, down to having no cooldown at 1800 total level and higher. 1800 total is not a challenge at all, I don't think. The true grinding guys will get it within 24 hours, probably. Last Recall messes with a lot of AFK, quote-unquote AFK relics, such as Eternal Harvest and Banker's Notes. I will be considering Last Recall. Also, there's something I didn't mention here, specifically for the melee and ranged guys out there. Last Recall makes it available for you to just go to your POH, replenish your weapon attack, your special attack, I mean. Last Recall back, and then just blow a boss out of the water. However, more about that when we get there. So, combat achievements. It has been confirmed that the CAs do not require Asgarnia. You can claim rewards from the Sage. I classed CA rewards weak in the past. In my previous videos, I said they were probably not worth it. However, they are available now everywhere. So me saying that they are weak, like that judgment is moot. It doesn't matter what I have to say. It doesn't matter whether or not they're good or bad. You just have them, right? However, I wouldn't specifically tailor my area picks around CAs. That's the only thing I want to say about this. Okay. DT2 Bosses. DT2 Bosses will require Desert. If you want the rings from any of the bosses, you will require both Desert and Fremenic. The locations of the DT2 bosses are Leviathan in Misthalin, which you should unlock immediately if you get Desert. Then the Whisperer is in Asgarnia, Fordorfis is in Courend, and the Duke is in Fremenic. One thing that I would like to say is I have, in parentheses, I've said Leviathan should be ranged, Whisperer should be maged. I am not sure to what extent the bosses can be attacked with other attack styles. It's pretty difficult to figure that out in the main game, and it's pretty difficult to look that up on wikis or YouTube videos. However, I did notice someone saying that if you want to melee the Whisperer, which is a very specific thing we are going to talk about because of the Soul Reaper, apparently the Whisperer will fucking shred you if you stand in melee range. So long story short is I think if you want the Soul Reaper, you should definitely consider Desert plus Courend and Desert plus Fremenic as your options. Or alternatively, grinding out the Whisperer with a maged weapon that is still 4 or 5 tick, or grinding out Leviathan with a ranged weapon, which is still probably 4 tick or maybe even 6 tick if you want to use a crossbow. So that's a lot less viable. It's possible though. So the Soul Reaper axe is available. As far as I know, at least, all the Soul Reaper axe pieces drop from every boss. And you only need one boss to get all the pieces. So you can get a Soul Reaper if you have one of these bosses available to you. The Ultor Ring is dropped from a combination of Desert, Courend, and Fremenic. As far as I'm concerned, this is not a valid combination for melee builds. It just isn't. Then the Bellator Ring. Sorry, I drew a blank for a second. The Bellator Ring is in Desert, Asgarnia, Fremenic. And it is an alternative for Ultor. I just wouldn't consider these 3 areas if the ring is the thing you want to go for. So if you're going as Garnia Fremenic for some reason, I actually might be, but what I'm going to do is something I'm going to talk about at the very end of this video. But I really like the Asgarnia Fremenic route. Then actually you might consider going Desert, and then just you get an Ultor ring. Sorry, Bellator ring. But ultimately, these rings, the Bellator and the Ultor at least, are not worth picking these areas for. That's my personal conclusion. Then the Magus ring requires Desert and Fremenic. With Kandarin, this is a very valid route. It's very good, actually. Venator ring, which is the ranged ring, requires Desert and Fremenic because it drops from Leviathan. I've included Misthalin, but Misthalin is free. If you go Desert Fremenic for a Venator ring, all you really need is a main weapon. And during the mage route, I will be talking about this, but Fremenic only really provides the Venator bow, and Desert I don't think has any ranged weapons for you. So you would need an area for a main hand ranged weapon, but it is possible. However, again, I wouldn't base my area picks on the Venator ring alone. Okay, now for the exciting stuff. Tier 1 relics. If you really want to know what all of the relics do, I highly suggest visiting the wiki or opening up the menu in the main game. I cannot right now, but you probably can when you're watching this video. Endless Harvest, as far as I interpret it, is essentially just 2x fishing, woodcutting, and mining supplies. Like banking things immediately is completely worthless to me. Because of Last Relic, because of Banker's Note, if you want to pick that. Like, Endless Harvest is okay, but it clashes with the Tier 3, which is the Banker's Note. It's somewhat synergistic with Infernal Gathering. Infernal Gathering will, like, immediately cook or burn or smelt your supplies. It says it's a potential time saver if we get beyond 25 mil experience tasks. I think we get up to 50 mil. So it's a potential time saver for certain skills where you have to gather the supplies for. So cooking, fletching, fire making, smithing, maybe even crafting. So Endless Harvest, like all in all, it's not a bad pick, but it's not that good. People have been shitting on Endless Harvest. Don't believe those guys either. However, if we go to... Oh, crap, I'm getting messaged. That's not good. Whatever, doesn't matter. Just work, right? Sorry about that, guys. I tend to do this thing in one take so I can upload it immediately. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to like open this entire clip up in like Sony Vegas. I have to cut things up. I have to maybe do something in post production. I have to record certain bits. It's gonna take way too long, basically. And I want to get this out today. All right, let's continue. Production Prodigy is a probably my personal most interesting pick. It does clash with Infernal Gathering. For instance, if you automatically smelt ores, then you don't really benefit from smithing bars immediately, right? However, I don't really mind. I will be talking about this clash when we get to the tier 5 relics. The 25% chance on one extra item I think is negligible. I don't really see how getting like 25% chance to get an extra product. I don't know. I don't really see it. The plus 12% boost is stronger than you would think. However, it falls off completely at max level. Also, like plus 12, what it basically means, it allows you to get to certain thresholds faster. So let's say with smithing, you want to smith mithril stuff or adamant stuff or runite stuff. You can get there at 12 levels faster, which means your experience rates when you're leveling it to 99 are going to be higher. That's actually quite useful. There's one thing. The Fire Sail, which is a tier 3 relic, plus Production Prodigy, is like it makes for very fast fletching, very fast crafting, very fast cooking. It's probably very strong, relatively at least. But I will be talking about Fire Sail when we get to the tier 3 slide. Okay. It's a potential time saver. If we get beyond 25 mil experience task, and we will, that has been confirmed. If you take a look at the wiki, I think it goes up to 50 mil. It's a potential time saver for smithing, cooking, whatever. So it's really good, actually. Production Prodigy is strong, TLDR. So Trickster. Trickster is the odd one out, in the sense that we don't really... it's like the most... How do I say it? This relic causes the most uproar because we don't really know how it will change the meta. As far as I'm concerned, AFK pickpocketing is worthless. It's like people love AFKing. Like, come on, man, you've AFK'd every single hour you've played OSRS. Are you really gonna AFK in a temporary game mode as well? Like, seriously? And you have to realize, like, okay, like the moment you get enough money, the moment you get 99 or 50 mil thieving is like at some point it's going to fall off. Whereas with Production Prodigy, in my opinion, I don't think it's going to fall off at all, because you would have to get cooking, smelting, fletching, cleaning herbs, crafting leathers, all of that have to go to 50 mil. So I think like AFKing it's whatever to me. However, double loot is pretty damn good, actually. It's an excellent moneymaker in early game, Trickster is. And double loot specifically is good when you start talking about blood shards. If you are a melee Mauritania Chad, you should seriously consider Trickster because of blood shards alone. Not failing thieving is actually super good as well. It's super good. However, skirking and sepulcher, I think, can still fail. And I don't know if, for instance, Pyramid Plunder, it can probably fail as well. I'm not sure. So my point is... actually, I don't know if Pyramid Plunder can fail. My point is this. If you're just like in it to get like 50 mil thieving experience, do you really need Trickster, actually? Because the real strength is in double loot, right? It's not in AFKing or never failing thieving. Right, so that's the thing I'm thinking about. You can just get 50 mil on Ardy Knights, maybe. I don't know. However, if you are in Tiranwin for elves specifically, or if you are in Mauritania, then Trickster actually becomes very interesting. If I would go Trickster, I would probably forget everything I'm doing and shoot straight for at least 99 thieving. Just like I want the money, basically. The loot from pickpocketing, the coin pouches, I want them, right? Anyway, my conclusion is that there is no true bad pick. In terms of hours saved, I think Trickster is actually the weakest. If you are new to Leagues, Endless Harvest is probably the safest. And the way I see it, and I might be wrong, Production Prodigy is arguably the strongest. Basically what you should do, like you have to look at the specific activities and see if you hate certain ones and pick a relic in that area to support you. So if you really despise agility and pickpocketing, pick Trickster. Do yourself a favor. For instance, I don't like cooking and smelting and fletching or whatever. I'm going to pick Production Prodigy. It's very simple. PP for me. So that's that. No true bad pick. Okay. Tier 2 Relics. Globetrotter. Probably very strong early game. Probably falls off completely. Like literally 100% late game. Region locks mess with the perception of how strong you think this relic is. This relic is not that great, because like if this were to be like you think you're a new Iron Man, you have the whole world available to you. You don't. You can unlock one area early game, and you can teleport to certain spots in that area. However, getting Rings of Dueling and Game Necklaces isn't that hard either. So which teleports are you really going to use when you're picking Globetrotter? In Globetrotter's defense, though, spellbook teleports are potentially quite useful. Specifically the Barrows teleport, come to think of it. Because, for instance, if you want to go Mauritania and want to grind out Barrows, if you want to put that in your POH, it's going to require 60% Arceus favor. Whereas Globetrotter, I think, is going to provide that teleport for you. So that's like the only thing Globetrotter really has for you. If you are undecided on this relic, go to the Discord, or alternatively take a look at the wiki and take a look at all the potential teleports that you have and figure out if you're going to use at least one of them. If you are a Fremenic player, I wouldn't even consider this relic. I'm going to build a POH and it's going to be beautiful. I'm not sure if Fremenic specifically actually counteracts Globetrotter because I just talked about needing Arceus favor, but yeah, this is just my perception of what Globetrotter is really. So Fairy's Flight opens up teleporting to leprechauns, and that is actually a unique teleport that's otherwise not available in the game, and that makes it by definition better. However, it's still questionable how strong it really is. However, there is a leprechaun in most major cities. For instance, if you think I want to teleport to Falador or Varrock or wherever, there are leprechauns there. So Fairy's Flight actually might provide the same teleports that Globetrotter does for you and your route. Fairy's Flight also potentially clashes with Farmer's Fortune in Tier 6, but that might actually be a good thing, and we're going to be talking about it a little bit more when we get to Tier 6, but basically Farmer's Fortune makes farming a little bit easier. Fairy's Flight, allowing you to teleport to all the leprechauns, makes farming easier as well, and in my personal opinion, Fairy's Flight is the better pick. So that leaves a little bit of wiggle room in Tier 6 to have a reason not to pick Farmer's Fortune, whereas Farmer's Fortune is actually quite strong in Tier 6. So picking Fairy Flight here opens up alternative relics in Tier 6, and for that reason alone, I think Fairy's Flight is probably stronger than Globetrotter. However, like I said already, if you think that you're just going to shoot for Barrows, which is a teleport, that's pretty difficult to get, you do that instead, It's fine. It's not like if you pick Globetrotter that you're a walker, right? If people don't know, in Leagues 1, you could pick a relic that gave you unlimited run energy. If you didn't pick it, you could immediately just log out and create a new account so you can rejoin the leagues and pick it. That's how strong infinite run energy was. And people who didn't pick it were called walkers. Anyway, Tier 3. People have been talking about this tier a lot. Like, a lot. People have been saying, yeah, I want both. They are so good, so strong. If you're reading ahead on the sheet, you can already see what I have to say about these two relics. They both suck. I'm just gonna say it. Why I will explain right now. So Fire Sale is a quote-unquote trap. It skyrockets your quote-unquote early game. Keep in mind, though, it's a Tier 3 relic. So your early game, it's not like you're going to get it as a Tier 1 and be able to buy all the runes you need, for instance. And arguably, Fire Sale will fall off completely late game because you will have enough money. You will be high-elking duplicate, unique drops. Basically, I don't think you're going to have any money issues in leagues. So also, if you look at from if you have like a theoretical perspective of things, infinite money sounds super good, but you cannot spend infinite money. So if you are able to get enough money with just alks and whatever, if you can spend that, then you're done. So Fire Sale has like this literally infinite gap between the amount you need and literally the amount infinite. and you cannot utilize that. So on paper, if you start arguing the way I'm doing, which is theoretically approaching this, it's a complete trap. And people have been saying this. Fire Sale is a noob trap. However, now let's take a look at Banker's Note. Banker's Note looks very strong. It is used literally everywhere. You can use it in skilling. You can use it in crafting. Not necessarily crafting as a skill, but in production skills, so smithing as well. You can use it in PVM, unnoting food, for instance, unnoting prayer potions. Banker's Note is literally used everywhere. That makes it extremely, extremely strong. However, I would say Banker's Note, in terms of skilling and crafting, or skilling and production, actually, I should say, loses power when Last Recall gains its full power. So when you have about 1800 total level, Last Recall becomes unlocked completely. That means Banker's Note is a little bit worse off, because now skilling and production skills aren't that useful anymore. I mean, they are useful. I mean, Banker's Note is not that useful anymore for those two skills. So what really only holds up at the late game is PVM. So unnoting your food, unnoting your supplies throughout PVM, super strong, right? However, if you are slaying, for instance, you're killing blood veils in Karen for some reason, you can just teleport away. You can teleport anywhere to your POH, for instance, to restore your prayer, to restore your weapon spec, whatever you want. And then you can just Last Recall back. So for Slayer, I would say Banker's Note is actually not that strong. Now, if you take a look at where Banker's Note might be strong, potentially, is an Instance PVM. However, if you know anything about Instance PVM in the main game, you don't need infinite food. Even if you're bad, you're just going to die because you're going to get one-shotted, right? If you mess up Warden Skulls in Toa, you die, right? So Banker's Note, I don't think is that strong. In fact, I would argue to just learn the mechanics and not try to cheese your way through everything with Banker's Note. The only exception to this, literally the only exception to this, is Inferno. However, I still think that if you are experienced in Inferno, you don't need Banker's Note either. And if you don't know anything about Inferno, you can't utilize it because you're going to die before you have unnoted your supplies, basically. So Banker's Note, on paper, it's super strong, but in practice, actually, I can just strike through every argument that you have for Banker's Note. So Banker's Note is actually a trap relic as well. And that is my conclusion about the tier 3 relics. I think they're both overrated. And I know that sounds maybe you didn't expect this, but that's how I view things. So I try to decide for myself which one of these two am I personally going to take, and I'm probably going to take Fire Sale in combination with the Production Prodigy in tier 1, and I am doing so because I want to skyrocket my early game. I want to get the 25 mil, the 50 mil skills. Construction, people have been talking about construction a lot, especially if you go Fremenic, super fast with Fire Sale. Crafting is probably super fast with Production Prodigy and Fire Sale, and there's probably a lot more. You virtually get infinite runes, you get infinite food, you get a lot actually with Fire Sale. And even though on paper Fire Sale is a trap, I think in practice Banker's Note is a trap. So realistically, so first of all, there's no wrong pick between these two. Even though I say they both suck, they both have their niches. But I think Fire Sale, especially maybe for Dragon Cuppers, is a lot more interesting because you want to get your points fast. And when you get your points fast, you can unlock your areas faster. Basically, your journey is just a lot faster. And I think speed is of the essence if you want to go for Dragon Cup. Banker's Note, as a final point of mention, means theoretically infinite HP and prayer in PVM. I don't want to mess around unnoting my supplies when I'm doing Insanity Warden, when I'm doing Chambers of Xeric running the Olm head. That's something I just don't want to deal with. So Banker's Note for me ain't it. No bueno. No good. But that's my personal opinion. You, on the other hand, may have a completely different opinion, and yours is valid as well, because objectively, they are actually pretty equal to each other. So Jagex did a good job balancing these. Okay. If you're paying attention, we're going from tier 3 to tier 5. That's because tier 4 are combat relics. So let's talk about tier 5 first. Bloodthirsty. It says, on the wiki at least, players can receive and cancel Slayer tasks remotely via Slayer helms, gems, and rings. That's worthless, in my opinion. Superiors have a spawn chance increased to 1 in 25. I think everyone has a 1 in 50 chance. That is pretty good for experience rates. So 50 mil Slayer is easier with Bloodthirsty. Now it gets interesting. It says 2 rolls on their normal counterparts drop table and a 25 actually % chance to for a superior Slayer monster to spawn as a Bloodthirsty variant, which gives 3 rolls on their normal counterparts drop table. I, admittedly, am not 100% sure what the normal counterparts drop table means. I am interpreting this as no extra chance at an imbued heart or an eternal gem. And the imbued heart is the important one of the two. If that is true, if I am right, then double and triple rolls on the normal drop table is useless. Especially if you go, like, the only thing that I can think of is certain items, like double whips, probably useless. Like, the most you probably get out of this is like having a double alch, which is something you don't need if you have Fire Cell. Maybe like double herbs, like it's super small. You don't need double herbs from a Slayer monster. That's something you don't need. That's the only thing that I can really think of when I'm looking at the normal drop tables. So, in my opinion, the way I read this, Bloodthirsty is absolutely worthless, actually. Also, one thing I do want to mention, it's also a literacy test. I see so many people in the Discord saying, yeah, you can pick your Slayer task. That's not how I interpret this. If you look at the wording, there's nothing in there that says that you can pick a Slayer task. And that's what I said. The wording insinuates that you cannot pick your tasks, actually. So I did a little search on the Discord, and I found a comment by Jagex Husky, and he says, no choosing tasks this league. There you go. So whenever you read this type of stuff, please double, triple, quadruple check, because you might end up picking Bloodthirsty and you are going to be the laughingstock after Leagues 4 is over on Reddit. Just like Walkers were in Leagues 1. Unless I'm making a fool out of myself and I'm missing something completely and I'm the laughingstock and people are going to tear me a new one in the comments. Who knows? Okay, so the real competition is between Infernal Gathering and Treasure Seeker. Infernal Gathering, I like this a lot, actually. For only one reason. Not needing coal to smith bars. I loved that. That's really good. However, that's not good enough. So, it's synergistic with Endless Harvest. If you want to AFK and you get like cooked fish, for instance, after like one evening of AFK, you're going to have thousands of sharks or anglerfish or whatever. Super synergistic, very useful. However, it's potentially antagonistic with Fire Sale because, for instance, not needing coal to smith bars, I think I think there are stores actually that sell coal. So you can just like spam click that you want to buy coal. You have Fire Sale, so you have infinite money. Coal is not a problem anymore. With Production Prodigy, you can just smelt them quite easily, and all you really need is 50 mil experience, which sounds like a lot, and it actually is a lot. But once you've done that, you don't need your Infernal Pickaxe, right? So that's like the thought process behind it. It's called a Trailblazer Pickaxe, actually. And then Treasure Seeker. Treasure Seeker has changed. It says it has changed, but probably similar to Leagues 2. That's something, because I prepared this yesterday, and then Jagex, or the wiki at least, didn't have anything confirmed, so this is like a remnant of yesterday. The bottom line is this. I think a lot of points are behind clue rewards. There are some collection reward slot amount tasks, basically. I think the biggest one is 750 collection logs clocked. With clues, you probably need clues actually to get those type of tasks done. So I would say Treasure Seeker is probably the best out of these three. If you're playing for points or Dragon Cup, I think actually it's a must pick. Also, one point of notice, or not notice, worth mentioning. If you're a ranger and you are interested in hunting Pegations, then Treasure Seeker is also very relevant to you. If you really are undecided on Treasure Seeker and Infernal Gathering, or maybe even Bloodthirsty, God bless you, you should check how many points actually are behind Clue Scroll rewards. I simply don't have the time, because the point list is released 2 hours before before Leagues launch. So just do it yourself. Like when you're AFK fishing with your Endless Harvest, and you're you're deciding on whether or not you want to pick Infernal Gathering or not. Take a look at the points, would you? Let's see. Is there anything else I really want to say? Infernal Gathering, it clashes with Fire Sale and Production Prodigy, and it clashes very hard with them. And I am looking at Production Prodigy and Fire Sale, so I am pretty sure I'm going to go Treasure Seeker instead. Okay. Tier 6. Equilibrium, probably the most difficult relic to gauge in Leagues. Even after Leagues 2, it is still pretty difficult to gauge. I think, if you really think about it, Equilibrium doesn't change your gameplay at all. You're going to hit tier 6, you're going to pick Equilibrium, and nothing happens, right? As opposed to when you pick Ruinous Power and you get a new fucking spellbook. That's like a huge, huge difference. So Equilibrium, nothing really changes for you. It's probably good if you want to push 50 million experience tasks. If you love skilling, then maybe Equilibrium is good for you. However, let's say you have either Endless Harvest or Production Prodigy. You have Fire Sale or Banker's Note. Doesn't actually matter. Like, does Equilibrium really change the meta for you? Does it? I don't know. It might change something, but you're gonna have to like look at YouTube videos, look at the Discord, figure out if some people or how certain people are using Equilibrium, and then you might find something. All in all, I would say it's not bad. Don't get me wrong. Equilibrium is not bad. I just don't. It's not exciting either, and I don't think it's necessary if you want to go Dragon Cup. So I don't really see any reason to pick it. Then Farmer's Fortune. If you haven't played an Iron Man before, farming is a thing, and when I say a thing, I mean a problem. Long story short, the 3x yield is good. We don't have the Leagues 2 relic that disabled your stat drain. So in Leagues 2, you had a relic. I think it was also the same relic, actually, that prevented, like, let's say you drank a super combat. Now your stats are increased. They never go down. They aren't drained back to their normal levels. So that means you actually need more super combats, more ranging potions in Leagues 4. Right? That means you're going to be using more potions. That means you're going to be using more herbs and farming supplies. That means 3xing your yield is actually very strong. However, there is one new kid on the block. Actually, it's not a new kid on the block. It's more like a comet on the horizon coming straight at you at 2,000 million miles per second. That is Ruinous Powers. Jagex, what have you done? I don't even know where to begin with Ruinous Powers. So I completely dismissed Ruinous Powers when it was announced. I didn't want to read anything about it because I thought it sucked. They changed it up a lot. After that, basically the community shut it down and the project was scrapped. because it was never confirmed that it went into the main game, I never looked at Ruinous Powers again. After the very first iteration, I looked at it once. I never looked at it again. That means I don't know shit about Ruinous Powers. I literally don't know anything about Ruinous Powers. I haven't watched a single video on Ruinous Powers. However, yesterday, I did take a look at Ruinous Powers. And the first thing that, and the only thing actually, that comes to mind are the combat prayers, which are, the way I interpret them at least, stronger than Piety, Rigor, and Augury. And the vows. I've taken a screenshot of the vows: Umbra's vow, Cruor's vow, and Glacy's vow. And they're pretty interesting, actually. They're pretty nice. I didn't mention that on the sheet, but I want to say it out loud right now. They're actually quite synergistic with Soul Stealer in the sense that if you have infinite prayer, then the vows actually become very interesting. Either way, doesn't really matter. My conclusion for the tier 6 at least is that the Ruinous Powers are very strong. And they are worth considering because they provide something that is unattainable by the other relics. The other relics give you better yield, maybe a little bit better experience. Ruinous Powers give you a new spellbook. Actually, prayer book. That is, like, from a theoretical perspective, that's unparalleled. One thing that is specifically worth mentioning is that if you take Ruinous Powers, Piety, which was supposedly rather strong for melee, but it needed Kandarin, and Kandarin is a shit area, especially for melee. Piety, or Kandarin actually, isn't even considered anymore if you think of going Ruinous Powers, because I think it's called Decimate is stronger than Piety. And also keep in mind that the 4% magic damage that the Ruinous Powers prayer gives you is something Augury doesn't provide either, right? So I think Ruinous Powers is actually pretty damn good. If it were up to me, it's a toss-up between Farmer's Fortune and Ruinous Powers. Because I'm going Fairy Flight in tier 2, I am just going to take my 3x yield loss and not pick Farmer's Fortune. I'm just going to pick Ruinous Powers. And I'm just going to do some more farm runs. That's just the way it is. I don't think I'm going to be hurting for seeds. And maybe I should look this up, really. But maybe I am going to be hurting for seeds a little bit. And then maybe Trickster actually becomes a little bit stronger. Who knows, actually. That's interesting. But I'm not steering away from Production Prodigy in tier 1. So, even though I'm not going Trickster, I'm not going Farmer's Fortune either. So Ruinous Powers is the pick for me. If you are new, whatever you do, don't pick Equilibrium. If you are new to leagues, if this is your first league, do not pick Equilibrium. Okay. Tier 7. Oh, crap. I messed this up, actually. Hold on. I'm going to do this live. Give me 1 second. I don't know why this went wrong. There we go. I'll just do it like this. Sorry about that. I didn't update the screenshot for some reason. So, the Soul Stealer, it says it's unknown. It's actually known now. I think this sheet, I didn't update it today. I updated it yesterday last, when things weren't announced. Soul Stealer is not unknown. We actually know what it does. The minimum hit is a DPS increase, basically. However, I don't know by how much. It's pretty difficult to calculate, I would say. So the increased minimum hit, I'll highlight it actually because I can do that. It sounds okay. I don't think it's super strong. I don't think it's worthless either. Then, if you want to know, healing for 5% of your DPS, which is 50% chance for 10% of the damage you deal. it translates to about 1 or 2 HPS if you are sitting between 20 and 40 DPS. And 40 is like super high end. We'll be talking about the amount of DPS that you get to do in leagues in a second, but like 20 is attainable, 40 is really high. So 1 or 2 HPS is not bad. It's not bad. I think it's enough because it's not just healing. This is also prayer returned. This is also probably enough to sustain the high-level prayer bonuses and protection prayers. Hopefully, at least. Because the prayer drain is sometimes between like 1 and 2. And depending on how much prayer per second you can get back through Soul Stealer, you don't need prayer potions anymore. And if you do, you have to, I don't know, turn off Decimate for a second. And then after 20 seconds, you can put it back on. Who knows? Either way, Soul Stealer is probably the weakest pick on paper, I would say. I don't like it that much. However, Soul Stealer becomes very interesting if the other relics are not interesting, right? I know that makes sense when I say it out loud. However, not everyone seems to understand when I say such a thing, right? So, hold on. Let me put it like this. There we go. And then maybe up a little bit. So I'm realizing that this video is becoming scuffed quite fast. However, I don't want to deal with having to change a lot of things. Then I have to render the entire thing, probably going to take over 2 hours. I just want to get this video out. So you're going to have to deal with it. I'm sorry. Okay. Where were we? I talked about Soul Stealer. Now I would like to talk about Weapon Master. So Weapon Master doesn't seem to have the 20% spec cap that it did in the previous leagues. In Leagues 2, actually. That means the BGS last recall thing that I talked about before is probably not that strong. However, Ancient Godsword heals you for the amount of damage you do, and it does the damage, does like 25 damage if the opponent doesn't move like 6 tiles away from the point where you spec'd him, I think. In PVM, that's very easy to do. And because special attacks get to sacrifice 25 hit points, Ancient Godsword actually makes for a net 0 HP drain on speccing. And then it is always a successful hit. It's going to have a minimum damage increase. So I think Ancient Godsword speccing is now the way to go. Long story short, if you do not use the 25 HP sacrifice thing, then you still get to spec a lot more because you have this this part of the Weapon Master. The special attack energy is restored 30% every 30 seconds. The Light Bearer will increase it. Ancient GS, which is probably the highest healing item, I think, translates to about 0.5 HPS. This is doubled when you have a Light Bearer. So this is when you don't use your HP to sacrifice. When you don't sacrifice your HP to get your weapon specs out, you actually get about 1 HPS, which is actually very similar to Soul Stealer. So the strength in Soul Stealer lies not only in healing, but also in the prayer restored. Whereas Weapon Master only restores HP, at least with Ancient Godsword. You also have a Saradomin Godsword, I believe, that restores both HP and prayer. I don't know how strong that is from the top of my head, but it's probably a little bit lower than the 0.5 HPS. And that's because in Leagues 2 it was actually strong because there was a 20% spec cap, but that's not there anymore. So I didn't really consider the SGS this time around. Either way, one thing that I have to say out loud, Weapon Master equals Asgarnia. It just does for both melee and ranged. If you're thinking about ZCB specs, sure, Asgarnia. If you're thinking about BGS, SGS, Ancient GS, doesn't matter which one, Asgarnia. Asgarnia, Asgarnia, Asgarnia. It's very simple, actually. Okay. Berserker. It also says it's unknown, but it's not. It has a Darok effect and a guaranteed max hit. I would say this is extremely strong when slaying. Like, you're one-shotting things, probably. That's actually what's going to happen. You're going to one-shot everything, probably. If there's a Bloodveld with, I don't know how much HP a Bloodveld has. Let's say it has 80. Boom, one-shot it. Very simple. If there are certain bosses that you can pray one style against, and when I say one style, I mean you can mitigate all the damage they do. So, for instance, Giant Mole, probably other bosses, Zulra maybe? Actually, no, not Zulra. So some bosses like Zulra, like Vorkath, and most raids actually sometimes do some damage that you cannot avoid. If you're sitting on a Berserker effect, you're gonna get clocked. Basically, you die. That said, that is also potentially synergistic with Undying Retribution in Tier 8, which means, if you don't know, you blow yourself up, you do a whole lot of damage, and then you have full HP. So you can sit on the Berserker effect. If you mess up once, you're going to trigger Undying Retribution. Works great, probably. I don't know, I didn't fully explore this, but you might want a Rock Cake or a Dragon Slayer 2 orb in order to get your HP down. I don't know if there are actually other alternatives. I think, I don't know, can you eat glass or something like that? In game, I mean, just for just for clarification. Either way, my personal conclusion, Soul Stealer on paper is the weakest of the three. Berserker isn't that great in difficult content unless you know what you're doing. If you are a pro, like a literal pro, I'm talking like Port Khazard levels, new, I think his name is New Type, those types of guys, they will probably actually maybe pick Berserker because they know how to balance their HP in a way where they are doing maximum DPS and not die, right? So unless you are very experienced, Berserker I don't think is that good. One mistake means that you're dead, basically. You can pick Berserker alongside Undying Retribution. That is pretty good for noobs as well, I would say. And ultimately, I think Weapon Master is a super, super strong pick, specifically for melee and also for range to a certain extent, because it's super flexible. Like, there are lots of spectral weapons in the game. Weapon Master is strong. Like I said already, I predict Weapon Master with Ancient Godsword and Last Recall will provide a flash farm meta, is something I would like to call it. In the past, we last recall to Bandos, we whack him 5 times with a BGS, then he's dead. You loot him, you go back to your POH, and then you restore your spec. Then you last recall back to Bandos, and you whack him again. However, I suspect that's not possible anymore, because there's no 20% spec cap. So you're going to need an Ancient Godsword. However, Ancient Godsword is dropped by Nex, and soloing Nex actually might be quite difficult even in leagues. And you might have to do Bandos, for instance, first before you can get to Nex. What I'm saying is you might have to grind out like your Bandos Tassis, your Bandos Chestplate before you can actually like reliably solo Nex. I don't know. I literally just don't know. And then you get your Ancient GS quite late. So that's something you have to keep in mind. Also, what you have to keep in mind is that Weapon Master is relatively weak for magic. It may actually be completely useless because the one spec weapon I would say that there is for magic is a Curse Scepter, which drops in the Wilderness. It drains your enemy's magic defense by 15%. However, with the vows from the Ruinous spellbook, you achieve the same effect. And now your Accursed Scepter spec is useless. So I would say Weapon Master is the weakest pick for magic. The only magic spec weapon that I can think of is the Mauritanian Nightmare Staves. They might be worth specking with. And lastly, think of your main hand weapon, please. If you are running around with a Bowfa, T-bow, Scythe, or you're in the Corrupted Gauntlet for some reason, you cannot spec at all. And then your tier 7 relic is 100% useless. That would be a shame. Either way, if you are new to leagues, you pick Soul Stealer or Weapon Master. And ultimately, if you pick Berserker, nothing's wrong with that either. Maybe the actual conclusion would be think about what content you're gonna do. If you're gonna slay a lot, Berserker is gonna be insane. If you're gonna boss a lot, Weapon Master, specifically Last Recall in God Wars Dungeon, is very strong. If you're gonna do instance content, raids for instance, then Soul Stealer is actually the safest pick. And me personally, I'm gonna lean towards Soul Stealer. It's probably still very good, even though I say that it's probably the weakest of the three. So that's how you have to think about this. Okay, tier 8. Executioner. The big question I have is it going to execute bosses? The general consensus seems to be yes, it's going to execute bosses too. So you're given a Sage's Axe, which I think is an item that you don't have to equip, but you do have to click it, and it instantly kills targets who have less than 20% of their health remaining. What I did is I've taken a look at the HP of certain bosses. So Bandos is the first one, 255 HP. If you do 20 damage per second, the Executioner is going to save you 2.5 seconds at best. Forecath 7.5, level 150 Invocation Zebak is 9 seconds, level 500 Zebak is 17 seconds, Xarpus is 34 seconds, that's quite a lot actually. I personally don't want to deal with clicking an item in my inventory, mostly because if you click it before it reaches 20%, then you're going to be fucking around expecting that the opponent is dead, and then you maybe miss a prayer and it starts to get wonky. I don't really like that. Also keep in mind, I calculated the amount of time you save, but I didn't assume the 20% DPS, not 20%, 20 DPS is from gear alone. If you have, for instance, a Guardian out, your DPS is going to be higher, right? So the amount of time saved is lower than that. Okay, Undying Retribution. It's very hard to gauge. It will have a 3-minute cooldown. With Berserker, you can mess up every 3 minutes, basically. Normally, I would say anything that includes the words upon death, I would rank that immediately as useless. It's bad. However, you resurrect with full HP, and that opens up a suicide meta, probably. A suicide meta where you have an insane vengeance bomb, basically, and you just kill yourself, and then you deal like 170 damage, I think I've seen somewhere. And that actually might be incredibly strong. I don't know if the damage it does scales with the boss that you're attacking. Actually, it says it doesn't. Upon death, the player's hit points and prayer points are fully restored, dealing up to 200% of the player's prayer. So that is, if you have 99, I'm being an idiot, 198. I don't know why I had to use a calculator for that. I just wanted to be fast, but it probably would have been faster if I just did it out loud. I mean, by thinking out loud instead of typing it. Either way. It's strong. It's very strong. However, my gameplay style is to stay alive, basically, and having to die on purpose in order to get something out of my relics. I don't know. It's very difficult to gauge. I would say, basically my personal conclusion is, if you are new to the game, don't pick it. Even though that sounds a little bit, how do I say it, counterproductive, because you might think, oh, I'm new to the game, I'm probably going to die. Undying Retribution is going to save me from death. I wouldn't rationalize it that way. I would say, if you're new to the game, you die. If you die once, you're probably going to die again within 3 minutes, and now your relic is wasted. If you're new to the game, actually, I would recommend picking Guardian. So the DPS of Guardian is unknown. It looks like the Guardian is actually pretty damn strong. It has all 3 attack styles. It behaves like a Thrall. It stays for 30 minutes. In multi-combat areas, it's going to attempt to cast AoE attacks. You can use your Thralls alongside your Guardian. You can use your Thrall instead Gauntlet. It's super good. And, not to mention, for some people this might be important, you can change your Thrall, your Guardian at least, to look like a girl. It's very important. Anyway, in conclusion, Undying Retribution is impossible to gauge. Without Berserker, I would probably skip it. I don't like the idea of having to die to get something out of it. I'm probably going to take Soul Stealer. And Soul Stealer kind of clashes with Undying Retribution. Also, if you're going melee, you have increased bonus defenses. And I will show those in a second. So dying is actually maybe a little bit more difficult. I don't know. I personally am going to pick Guardian, probably. Executioner is still on the table, but Guardian is up there. It's just the most passive. It works for any PVM. Executioner does not. So think about this: if you're slaying, are you going to use Executioner for every Bloodveld you kill, for every Smoke Devil you kill? Probably not, right? Guardian, on the other hand, is useful everywhere. I would only seriously consider Executioner if most of my areas had instant content, specifically raids and maybe, I don't know, the Nightmare. Forecast not even though that's instance as well. So if you're going like Mauritania, Kourend, Desert, then suddenly Executioner, the usefulness skyrockets, right? That's the point I'm trying to make. Okay. Now, the reason why we're here. Combat Relics. Combat Relics. Where do I begin? Melee and ranged have double damage. That nets to about plus 10% damage. Magic, on the other hand, gets 20% flat. Super strong. Melee status immunity is actually quite interesting. I like that. The immunity to poison, venom, and fire breath is pretty neat, I would say. Also, melee gets bonus defense by 50%. I'm assuming that your defensive stats from your gear is increased by 50%. That's actually quite nice. I don't mind that at all. So, for ranged, the big thing when ranging is the enchanted bolts, a 2x boosted chance to proc. That's super strong. With the Zenyte crossbow, it's going to be incredibly strong. And then the magic rune save is very good early game. However, if you pick Fire Sale, you will not have a rune problem anymore. And Fire Sale is before Combat Relics. So it's pretty good early game. But also, if you have Fire Sale, it's completely useless, basically. All right, I'm going to grab a little sip of my water. 1 second. Okay. I'm going to tell you right now, this list is not exhaustive. Period. Also, what I'm also going to tell you is if you're going to look for the most DPS, you're probably making a mistake. Whether you're doing 26 or 28 DPS, I don't think it really matters. I'm just going to say it. There isn't going to be a boss in this game that is going to require you to do 4 or 5 more DPS. Probably. However, what you can see here is, for instance, when you're killing a Bloodveld with a Max Mage Shadow setup, you're going to do a lot of DPS, 37.45. With a Scythe, it's going to be over 40. And for instance, with a Bowfa, it's going to be only 24. Quite honestly, if you're killing Bloodvelds in that gear, you probably, like, especially if you're new, you probably won't even notice the difference between a Bowfa and a Shadow. I'm just going to say it. There's overkill involved, especially on Bloodvelds. I don't think, like, on paper, this sounds like an incredible difference. But when you're doing, like, once you get to the point of doing 24 DPS, I don't think you have to worry about anything in the game anymore. Okay. So what I also did is I've taken a look at Vorkath because he has a lot more HP and different defenses, of course. You can see that the ZCB actually stands out with 33 DPS. That's because of Ruby Bolts. Ruby Bolts are strong, very good actually. Also, people have been saying, well, the Bowfa, it's gonna suck, it's going to be bad. Relatively, maybe, but 22.88 DPS on Vorkath is not bad. It's not bad at all, actually. Xarpus, I just took Xarpus. I don't even know why. He has a lot of HP, actually. 3,400, I believe. So Shadow, 30. Scythe, 34. Soul Reaper, 30 as well. So this is actually a good example. If you take a look at the Scythe and the Soul Reaper DPS, the Scythe out DPSs the Soul Reaper by about 4 flat DPS points in Xarpus. That is not a reason for me to go Scythe. You go Scythe because you want to go Mauritania, right? That's the point I'm trying to make. You don't go a completely different region for a few more points of DPS, I would say. Okay. One last thing about this, I used the Bitterkoekjes DPS calculator, which he or she, I actually don't know, made for Leagues 2 and now Leagues 4. If that has any mistakes, then all of this information is wrong. So I'm outsourcing my responsibilities here. So this is just my opinion, and because it's mine, it's actually good. Figure out which zones you want. Either like you either want to go somewhere, or you really don't want to go somewhere. Those are your two metrics, basically. That's your rubric to figure out which zones you want to go to. I wouldn't even look at the item unlocks, right? If you really fucking hate Vorkath and Muspa and whatever Donkey Kongs, actually, Dagonoth Kings, don't go Fremennik. It's that simple, right? So that's how I would figure out which zones I would go to. And then, as a second thing that you can do, you take a look at the weapons and you can just pick one and run them through a DPS calc to see if it's worth it. It probably is. And then maybe you should take a look at the armor as well. However, armor is a lot weaker than weapons in this game, but not by that much, because bonus strength, bonus range, and bonus magic damage exists. Armor is actually pretty damn relevant as well. If you play for points, same story. However, you're going to have to take a look at the task list. Some people, for instance, this is something I really want to mention. One guy in particular, he commented on my last video and he said, I want to go mage and I want to go Asgarnia because Asgarnia has good tasks, easy to grind, and that's good for points. But Asgarnia doesn't have anything for mage, literally nothing. So I didn't consider Asgarnia at all for mage. But for him as an individual, Asgarnia is actually a good pick because he wants points. So if he's playing for Dragon Cup, for instance, damn right, you just go Asgarnia for mage. It's perfect. It works for you. You get to kill the Whisperer. Great, right? So that's the way I try to rationalize things. Then, the most important thing is the bottom line: a main weapon and some armor. That's all you need. Like, look at a weapon that's better than a whip, basically, and that's your main hand weapon for the rest of the game. Look at some armor that's better than Black Dragonhide, probably, or something like that, or like Rune. And then you have your armor for the rest of the game. So when you're talking about like ranged routes, Carol's is fine. It's perfectly okay, right? So that's how I constructed my routes. Anyway, let's continue. Piety. Man, this was a point of discussion for the longest of times. Is Piety worth it? Blah, blah, blah. Long story is no. Chivalry is not available. only the 15% strength one is, and that's called ultimate strength. So without Piety, I just took a run-of-the-mill setup. I know that you're not going to get a Natus Not Face Guard, full bandos, a Brimstone Ring. I know that you're not going to get that in leagues. However, you might have Torva, and your setup might be better than this. Point is this. I took this setup deliberately, and I ran it through the calculator on, I think, a Bloodveld. Yep, I did. It says so at the top. And then with that Piety, you're going to get about 17 DPS. With Ultimate Strength, you're going to get about 19.5. And then with Piety, you're going to almost end up short of 21. With Decimate, you're pushing 22. Long story short, and this is about the conclusion that everyone has come to, Piety is about a 6% DPS increase over Ultimate Strength. However, when we were discussing this, we didn't know that we were going to get Ruinous Powers. Ruinous Powers are super interesting, and in any shape, way, or form, don't ever waste a region on Piety. Unless you want to find yourself in Kandarin doing tasks and play the game in Kandarin, don't go Kandarin for Piety. That is the biggest mistake that you can make. So don't go Kandarin for Piety alone. I hope I made myself clear. Bowfa versus Crossbows, that has been an interesting one. Same thing about the setup. I need to drink some water some more. I've been talking for over an hour. I'm sorry. Okay. Bowfa on the right, Rune Crossbow on the left. People have been saying, well, Rune Crossbow is going to thrash Bowfa. Well, not really. The TLDR is Bowfa is outclassing RCB unless your opponent, your target, I mean, has a lot of health. So these people that have been saying that RCB is better than Bowfa, they are right, because if you sim it against Vorkath, there is a significant DPS difference, like a very significant DPS difference. 24.3 on the RCB against Vorkath, against almost 17 for the Bowfa. Whereas if you sim it against the Bloodveld, the Bowfa comes up top with 18.5 versus RCB's 15.75. Long story short, for almost all content, Rune Crossbow is actually stronger, probably. For bossing, it's definitely stronger. And there is no reason to go Tyranwin for a Bowfa. That's like the long story short. There is no reason to go Tyranwin for Bowfa. Bowfa is still a good weapon. It still is able to do a lot of damage. Like I said, I've simmed it with about 22 DPS in max ranged on a Bloodveld, I think. That means 20. Like if you go above 20 DPS, you're gonna have a great time in leagues. If you are having 18.5 DPS, you're gonna have a good time in leagues. So there's like two aspects to this discussion, and it's pretty difficult to make an argument. Because on the one hand, DPS is fun, but it's not that important. And on the other hand, you have your areas to pick, and if you really want to be in Tyranwin, I would grind out a Bowfa. If you don't want to be in Tyranwin, I wouldn't. Even if Bowfa had like double DPS, I wouldn't go Tyranwin because I hate Corrupted Gauntlet. And like Bowfa isn't that good, so you don't have to go Tyranwin if you would even consider a Bowfa. So there's like three things here. You either have to like the area, you either have to hate the area, and the item that's in the area. All three of these things are not enough to either go or not go there, right? So that's like the point I'm trying to make. I'm starting to realize that the point I'm trying to make is becoming a little bit convoluted, but this is what I'm trying to say. I hope I've made my case. Voidwaker. Weapon Specialist draining HP hurts the last call plus spec synergy. That means, I've been talking about this a little bit, the BGS setup, where you last recall to POH, use your BGS, blah, blah, blah. You can do the same thing with Voidwaker, however. You can spec twice, and now you're using HP in order to spec. That means the Voidwaker specking thing is not going to be that strong. So people have been saying, oh, you can go your magic relic and then use a Voidwaker. That's like completely offbeat territory. Like, seriously. In case you're wondering, the magic relic does affect the spec damage, the plus 20% that you get, and it also will splash. So the magic relic will give you like an AoE attack on your attacks in multi-combat. That probably will work with the Voidwaker specs. However, that's not enough to go magic Voidwaker. If for some reason you find yourself in the wilderness as a magic relic user, then you probably want to grind at Voidwaker and train your skills that way. It's good. It's not going to be bad, but you know, it's like magic Voidwaker is not like some secret technique that no one has thought about before. Voidwaker spec does scale of maximum melee hit. That means if you are a magic user, are you going to switch gears just for a spec? Like, are you going to, I don't know, let's say you have Torva somehow. You're in full Ancestral or full Virtus. Are you going to like do a three-way spec for a three-way switch for a spec? That's a tongue twister. Or are you just forget about the entire magic Voidwaker bullshit, basically? Anyway, and the fifth point, actually the fourth point, it says weapon master description is not fully available. It actually is. It also says if it caps to 20% and it doesn't drain health immediately, specking is back on the table. Specking is off the table. It does not cap to 20%, and even though it doesn't drain health immediately, after 2 specs you will start draining your HP, which means you cannot teleport to Bandos and spec him 6 times, or 5 times actually, sorry, and then teleport back. That's not happening with Voidwaker. It's only happening with the Ancient God Sword. That said, why have I put down that the Wildy plus Desert is a valid alternative? Oh yeah, what I meant is, and I will be talking about that in a second. If you pick either Mauritania or Asgarnia for your melee armor, then main-handing a Voidwaker is actually quite strong. Huh? What do I mean? I just talked about how Voidwaker specs are bad. Well, if you have full base gear, let's say you went Asgarnia, you have Voidwaker, Dragon Defender, full Torva, an Amulet of Fury probably. Let's say you have an Infernal Cape, Prim Boots. I don't know if you can actually get Barrow's Gloves, but whatever. And then your ring is going to be a Lightbearer. So if you take a look at the DPS, it actually says, I've simmed it against Gwardor, it says you're going to do 10.6 DPS. Well, that sounds like it sucks. However, if you take a look at the spec DPS, it's 45.8. Admittedly, I don't fully know how much DPS this will end up as, but if you are running around with a Voidwaker and a Lightbearer, then your DPS is a lot higher than 10.6. I can tell you that much. If you really want to know, if you truly want to know, go to the League's Discord and ask it there. There are some seriously smart motherfuckers in there. Ask them. Okay? So if you somehow have your eyes set on the Voidwaker, even though the last recall specking thing that I talked about isn't probably going to happen for you, just specking is super strong still. And maybe you can have like a weapon switch that you use, I don't know, just name any weapon that you can use when you're not specking. And then you dump your specs using your Voidwaker. Probably very high DPS, probably very strong. Okay? Okay. This is a image I really wanted to include. This image, the reason why I included it is because I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about all the areas that you can go to, all the content that's in these areas. If you want to include this into your routes, and you should, you have to do so yourself. All I'm talking about when I'm saying Asgarnia is God Wars Dungeons. All I'm talking about when I'm saying Wilderness is Voidwaker. All I'm talking about when I'm saying Mauritania is Barrows and TOB. All I'm talking about when I'm saying Desert is Toa, Kandarin is only really magic gear, the occult necklace, and the Zenyte bracers. Current is probably chambers, and that's about it. So basically, there's much more in all of these areas than what I'm talking about. And I'll give you one example to prove my point. Let's take... where do we want to go? Desert. Desert is an example. Desert has thug and bandit blackjacking. That's completely out of the scope of this video. It has Sorcerer's Garden. Cool. To be honest, to be completely transparent, I don't really care. So, if you're catching my drift, there's much more to the areas than just the bosses and the items that are dropped by these bosses. That's what I'm trying to say. If you're playing Leagues, first of all, you should play Leagues. When you're playing Leagues, you should craft a route, or at least think about the content that you're going to do. And there is more to these areas than just the bossing and the PVM, right? And you can use this image to take a good look at what's there. And maybe the guy who made this image forgot some stuff, and there's other stuff that no one ever really thought or talked about that you really want to do somewhere, right? Okie dokie. Oh, there's one thing that I do want to say. It's probably, what's it called? Isle of Souls, I think. Left of Apatol. I don't know if you can see my mouse. You can't. Basically, it's the island in the middle that's blue at the bottom. That's in Asgarnia, apparently. So that's something you have to realize. Anyway. Areas. I don't want to talk about all the areas. I do want to talk about 4 of them specifically. The first one is Desert. It used to suck in Leagues 2. It will probably be fine in Leagues 4. So in Leagues 2, it had very poor tasks. I say probably because I haven't taken a good look. I'm not going to do it right now because then the video is going to be even longer. But Desert is probably fine in Leagues 4. MTA is fixed because you get like 8 times the point rewards. Temporis and Foundry are available, and Toa is just fun. It's good. Kandarin, does it suck? The short answer is yes. Magic users need Kandarin. I think it's a hard grief if you don't go Kandarin as a magic user. I will be talking about that in a second. Ranged users could go there. For melee, it's just not worth it. So the big thing that people are talking about when talking about Kandarin is the 2000 Apatol lapse. Yesterday, I've written down that hopefully Kandarin has other master tasks. Today, just now, I have confirmed that both the 1.5k and the 2k Apatol lapse are in master. I have not seen a relic that gives you more than one agility lap per agility lap run, if that makes sense. So there's no increase there's no multiplier for the laps. So if you want these 2 master tasks done, you're going to have to run 2k laps. Some people will do it. I advise against it. But there are no other good master tasks in Kandarin to replace your 2 bad master tasks. So you're going to be missing out on, 800 points? That's quite a lot. Okay. Tyranwin. People have been shitting on Tyranwin because Rune Crossbow exists. The blowpipe also gets a lot of flack. Long story short is Tyranwin is considered weak for weapon unlocks. There's a lot of things in Tyranwin that are good. Prifdina's is very good actually. But for weapon unlocks, specifically the blowpipe and Bowfa, there are other and better alternatives, and they are all within Asgarnia. Now, the big one. The thing that people don't realize is that Asgarnia is the quote-unquote burnout area. Farming 4 and now 5 God Wars dungeons bosses is not that fun. If you've played Leagues before, you know exactly what I mean. So some people do like it. If you're one of the people that do like last recalling 600 times the bandos, more power to you, right? You enjoy it, that's good. Me, I don't think it's all that fun, and I know that there are people that think alike. God Wars Dungeons is a pretty big farm, actually. Alternatively, you can learn a 6-0 Bandos or a 6-0 Krill, but ultimately you're going to end up last recall flash farming 500 kills per boss for your gear. And quite frankly, like learning 6-0, I don't know if you even can do that with a 2-tick weapon, but still, like learning certain methods, it's not going to happen. You're just going to face tank the damage they deal to you. You're just going to out DPS them. You're just going to kill them and then last recall back. That's what's going to happen. That's going to be the meta. That said, Asgardian is probably really good for points. Okay, the Wilderness. During Trailblazer, people have been asking this question. Deaths will behave differently. PvP deaths will be treated like PvM deaths. And it means your items will be moving to a gravestone. I think everyone just gets their stuff back. That's what I've been gathering from other people. If these people are wrong, then I am wrong. But I think this is the case. Keep in mind the Discord message is from 2020, not 23. Okay, now after fucking 90 minutes, we are going to talk about the one thing that I've been meaning to talk about the entire time. And that is the routes. I promise you it's a lot more concise than last time. So, melee. Asgarnia is arguably mandatory. This has never changed. Asgarnia is super good for melee. It gives defenders, Bandos, Torva, BGS, SGS, Prims, Maxcape. Ancient Godsword is probably very strong, especially with Weapon Master. The only real alternative, in my opinion, is Mauritania. Last Recall is free, and Last Recall, I mentioned in a previous video, if you don't have Last Recall, then Mauritania is a little bit stronger because you cannot Last Recall back to Bandos, for instance, General Grardor. Everyone has Last Recall now, so it's literally just your decision. Do what you want to do. If you go Mauritania, Inquisitor is probably going to be your armor. It's still a huge grind, even with X5. If you are new and you want to go melee, I would strongly recommend Asgarnia. However, Mauritania gives the Slayer helmet. That is a very significant DPS increase. It's super strong. 15% if I am not wrong. I said in a bullet point, if Weapon Master works like Weapon Specialist, as in the 20% cap on specs, newsflash, it doesn't, then I still consider BGS Last Recall a bonkers combination. Otherwise, it's Ancient Godsword. Well, it's going to be Ancient Godsword. Ancient Godsword is going to be strong with Weapon Master. In my previous video, I said that Asgarnia plus Kandarin plus Mauritania is likely top DPS. That has changed. Asgarnia, Kandarin, Mauritania used to be a Vernic Defender, Piety, full Torva, and then a good one-hander somewhere. That is not top DPS anymore, unfortunately. Well, actually, very fortunately, not unfortunately, because Kandarin sucks, right? So one thing, I said it already, new players pick Asgarnia. You cannot go wrong with Asgarnia if you're melee. You just can't. Then, 7-tick Darok becomes 3-tick. With Berserker, you're going to have a lot of fun. People who played this in Leagues 3 know what they're talking about. In my not so humble opinion, weapons to look for are the Soul Reaper and the Scythe. They aren't necessary, but I think it's just fun to work towards one of those mega rares. The Fang is pretty good actually in the desert, but it's outclassed, so it's good but not insane. And like I said, you'll be fine throughout the entirety of Leagues 4 without a Scythe or without a Soul Reaper. You can play the game with a whip and be fine. There, I said it. Okay? In blue, skip Kandarin. Please skip Kandarin if you're melee. And seriously consider Ruinous Prayers. Even if you're not going Ruinous Prayers, you still skip Kandarin. I mentioned getting a free Dragon Scimitar in a previous video. It is now worthless because 5-tick weapons are also 2-tick, which means the Dragon Longsword is also 2-tick. That only makes the D-skim marginally better than the Dragon Longsword. It's probably less than 1% in terms of DPS. Then Kandarin. If for some reason you still want to go Kandarin, you go Kandarin as Garnia and a free pick. Then in your free pick, Wilderness, Mauritania, or the Desert are your best options. You could get your hands on a Soul Reaper with just the Desert, but meleeing Whisper and Leviathan is not possible. So you're going to have to either mage the Whisper or range Leviathan in order to get your Soul Reaper axe pieces. And if you don't want to go as Garnia, you can go Mauritania Kandarin and a free pick. I would say those are not the best routes that you could go, but it is an option. So without Kandarin, this is basically where the meat and potatoes are of the melee route. You take either Asgarnia or Mauritania as a base. And then I don't know why I haven't updated most of these sheets. Probably because I'm rushing out this video. If Weapon Master acts like Weapon Specialist and cap specs at 20%, it doesn't. You could go Desert plus Wilderness. However, even though it doesn't, you can still go Desert plus Wilderness, because I think the Lightbearer Voidwaker combination is still strong, just not for last recalling and dumping your specs with a Voidwaker, if that makes sense. If you don't want to go Voidwaker, that makes a lot of sense actually if you don't want to go Voidwaker, but I basically say if not, then you go Desert plus Courend, or alternatively Desert plus Frem. The reason why I recommend Courend or Fremenic is because you get an easier time getting your Soul Reaper, and your Soul Reaper is going to be very strong. If you are aiming for a Scythe, I would actually still consider Asgarnia. If you don't want Asgarnia, it's literally just Mauritania and 2 free picks. The reason why I would go Asgarnia is because of full Torva. I think Torva is stronger than Inquisitor. I'm not 100% sure. It does have much better defenses though. Either way, I would still consider Asgarnia. But I think if you want to go Scythe, you probably know what you want to do. So it's like, I don't feel like fully exploring why you would need Asgarnia. But basically Mauritania plus 2 times free pick. That's basically it when you want to go Scythe. You can run around full Inquisitor Scythe, you're going to have a great time. However, that's quite the grind. One last option. Asgarnia plus Fremenic plus Desert. It gives you the Bellator ring, Torva, Ancient Godsword, or BGS as a main hand. Sorry. However, these areas are not worth going for the ring only. So personally, I am looking at Asgarnia, Fremenic, and Desert. It says Ancient GS or BGS main hand. I think that combination actually opens up Soul Reaper as well. Yes, it does. Yep, it does. Asgarnia, Fremenic, Desert will give you Bellator and the Soul Reaper actually. And Torva. So a super good route. Then, one final option, and that is the door option, the door build. You will become a door. Full Justiciar from Mauritania, plus a Din's Bulwark from Courend. And I've said it's a meme build in quotation marks. I have no idea how strong this will be. Literally no idea. So, yeah, well, there you go. Some people have been exploring this option. It's going to be fun, probably. But if the DPS is... if the DPS from the Din's Bulwark turns out to be poor, then you've just wasted a lot of time figuring this out in leagues, right? However, keep in mind, the melee relic actually gives you bonus defenses, and your Din's Bulwark damage scales off of your defensive bonuses. So exploring a Justiciar plus Din's build is actually, it might actually be worth it. I don't know. I just don't know. Maybe I should do this actually. I can make a YouTube series out of this. How I beat leagues with a meme build. Who knows? Okay. Range route. Asgarnia, again, super strong, gives full armor, ACB, ZCB, Zenyte Fan Braces. CCB is going to be absurdly strong with Ruby Bolts. Period. The alternative, specifically in terms of armor, is Masori. Masori gives plus range strength, and that is actually not insignificant. I've calced Masori setup to do 16 DPS with just some random ass weapon, and then I've calced Arma to be at 15 DPS, which is like a full point of DPS difference. That is not nothing. So Masori is actually quite worth it. However, fortifying Masori does not increase your offensive bonus, so fortifying it is not required. However, this is like a butt on a butt on a butt. Taking Desert alongside Asgarnia is actually recommended. Why? Because Desert gives Masori, Masori gives you range strength, Asgarnia gives you crossbows and Zenyte Van Braces. So taking both Asgarnia and Desert is actually super worth it, even though fortifying Masori is worthless, right? So, long story short, either Asgarnia or Desert or both is going to be your base for your ranged route. That's how I would tackle this challenge, this problem. The alternative, if you're looking specifically for armor, is Tyranwin for the crystal armor. I just would not do this. I wouldn't go Tyranwin for crystal armor. That's like, why? Why would you do that? Just go as Garnia and run around in full armor. That's a lot smarter. If, however, you want to go crystal armor plus blowpipe, I would still consider Asgarnia or Desert for darts. So either way, you're not getting around Asgarnia or Desert. And that's why I've actually said in parentheses plus Bowfa, because only with crystal plus Bowfa you could theoretically not need Asgarnia or Desert, right? The alternative, if you don't want to go Asgarnia, you don't want to go Desert, and you definitely don't want to go Tyranwin, is Mauritania for Carols. In theory, Mauritania is the weakest pick for ranged, but for armor actually, Carols, is not that much worse than Armadillo. I've done the same calculation where Armadillo gets 15.06 DPS. I put in Carols and it's actually 14.92. So in terms of armor only, Carols isn't actually much worse than Arma. However, you would still want to go Asgarnia, because if you don't mind going Asgarnia, the lack of CCB, the lack of Zenyte Van Braces, it's much, much worse. So you don't really have a reason to go Mauritania. But if you really want to, Carols is fine. That's basically the point I'm trying to make. If you are new, you don't know what you want to do, and you want to pick ranged, go Asgarnia. It's very simple. You cannot go wrong if you go Asgarnia. Even if you fuck up your other two free picks, you have Asgarnia, you're running around in full armor, ACB or ZCB, you're going to be fine. ACB is going to be so strong, you can do all the content in leagues. And from there you can only go up, right? Okay, this cheat again. If you've seen my old video, you know exactly what I'm about to say. It's about the blowpipe and darts specifically. TLDR is, I think the blowpipe needs Desert or Asgarnia. The Desert gives tourist traps, which means you can smith your darts up to rune. Asgarnia has the mining guild, which means you can fletch your darts by getting amethyst darts. You do not need tourist trap for amethyst darts. And the first time I mentioned this, people have reacted to it by saying, well, you can get your darts from Crystal Implings, Forecath, Mythal Dragons. My reaction to that is, if you want to do that, you're a quote-unquote professional. You know what you're doing, right? So I cannot in my right mind recommend that to a new player or an average viewer. And if for some reason you don't want to be in the Desert, you don't want to be in Asgarnia, but you do want a blowpipe, then yes, you can actually source your darts from Vorkath if you want to. It's definitely possible. If you are not sure, and that's the gist of this slide, you save 90% of your ammo. You save 98% if you have the assembler. Blowpipe is a one-tick weapon. Do the math. I've done the math. With Vorkath specifically, he drops 50 Dragon Darts and up to 100 Rune Darts. If you get a full 50 Dragon Darts, because he drops between 10 and 50, if you get a full 50, those will last you about 25 real-life minutes. My conclusion is it's definitely possible to go a Blowpipe route without Desert or Asgarnia, but you have to think about it, and for you as an individual, that might be a mistake. I know for a fact that if I were to go a Blowpipe, I would go Asgarnia or Desert. Period. Yeah, I think I've said what I wanted to say about darts. I think I've made myself clear, so let's continue. So I talked a lot about ballistas and all sorts of stuff, blowpipes specifically. I think you can approach the ranged route the same way we approach melee. So you have like a base, and the base for ranged is either Desert, Asgarnia, or both. And from there, what you only really need is a weapon. And even if you go Asgarnia, you don't even need a weapon, because ZCB and even ACB is going to be so strong that you can go wherever you want, really. If you have Asgarnia as your base pick, you'll be fine in leagues. It's that simple. So what have I identified? Desert or Asgarnia or both, plus a free pick. You can go to Ranting for Blowpipe, Current for T-Bow. Keep in mind T-Bow is a grind. Current also gives you Rigor and Thralls. However, Rigor might not be used if you go Ruinous Powers, so it's up there. It's up in the air, I meant. You can go Kandarin for a heavy ballista, so you can either complete and get the ammo for the heavy ballista completely within Kandarin. That's actually perhaps quite worth it, the heavy ballista, but I'm not sure now, because mega rares are sometimes 2-tick now, so I think the heavy ballista is a little bit worse. You can go Wilderness for the Webweaver bow. You can go Fremonic for the Venator bow. However, I would not main hand a Venator bow on single target. I would be main handing a ZCB. However, Fremonic also gives the assembler and a ring potentially. So all of them are good routes. All of them. You cannot go wrong. One thing that is worth mentioning from the top of my head is the Dark Bow. I don't think the Dark Bow is going to be super crazy DPS. However, it might be fun. Who knows? I think Dark Beast, and I'm doing this from the top of my head, I haven't prepared this, are either in Tyranwin or wherever Ardone is. That is Kandarin, I think. So Kandarin or Tyranwin for Dark Bow. If you go Dark Bow, please get a Dragon Arrow source. So go to the wiki, look up Dragon Arrows, and figure out how you can get them within leagues. And then at the bottom, the Venator route, Desert, Fremonic, and a free pick. It gives Masori, Venator ring. From here, again, Asgarnia is your best pick. If you don't want to go Asgarnia, you should consider Tyranwin. Actually, hold on. This is a mistake. You actually, no, hold on. I'm getting conflicted. I'm getting twisted up. I'm getting things twisted up. I think I thought I wrote down Tyranwin and Kandarin for armor, but the Venator route doesn't give you a main hand weapon. So you're going to be running around in Masori, a Venator ring, and a Venator bow. However, you don't have a main hand weapon. From here, Asgarnia is still your best pick because it gives you a ZCB and Vambraces and whatnot. However, Tyranwin might give you a Blowpipe, which might be okay for you if you go this route. You can also go Kandarin if you want to go the Heavy Ballista. However, I think these are pretty much inferior to Asgarnia. And like there's one thing that you can also do, and that is go Kurend. But if you don't get your hands on a T-bow, I don't think you really have a weapon. If you go Desert, Fremenic, Courend, you don't really have a weapon. And that would be a shame. So that's a tricky route. Yeah. Sorry for the mix-up. I hope you still understand what I said. Then Mauritania. For the range route, this is when you want to go Carols as your armor. From here, you just need a weapon. Tyranwin for blowpipe, Corinth for T-bow, Kandarin for ballista, Wilderness for webweaver. You could go as Garnia for ZCB, but if you're going as Garnia, then why are you going Mauritania? Unless you really want to do TOB as a ranger. Right? So you've got some clashes there in armor, but ultimately it doesn't matter. You can go anywhere. Then, in the middle, Tyranwin, Fremenic, and Free Pick. That's the quote-unquote professional route. It's from Leagues 2. Bowfa, Blowpipe, Assembler, Ring, Venator Bow. Just source your darts. It's the only thing that I have to say about this route. Just source your darts. And because Desert and Asgarnia are very good picks, you already have a dart source, right? So that's what you can do there. Then there is one thing that is worth mentioning. That is the Kandarin plus Mauritania route. Why? Because it gives an imbued Slayer helmet. That is worth mentioning. So Kandarin will give you a heavy ballista. Mauritania will give you Carols, but it will also give you a Slayer helmet. However, your Slayer helmet will only work for melee unless you imbue it. And guess where you can imbue it? In Kandarin. This is a flexible route. Kandarin Mauritania free pick. It might be fun for you. It's not that flashy because the ballista, I don't think is going to be like super flashy with specs and high attack speeds and whatnot, but it's cool. Then we're going to be taking a look at Magic. Magic skips God Wars dungeons. Thank the Lord. That's like the main reason to go Magic in my opinion, or at least for me it is. It's not like the main reason to go there for most people, but for me it is. Interesting zones are Desert for Tumakin, Ancients, and Virtus. A much more interesting zone is Kandarin for Occult, Trident, Zenyte, Bracers specifically, Warp Scepters, and something I didn't mention is Kandarin gives you easy Mystic gear, the Mage gear, from the Wizards Guild. I am just going to say it, Kandarin is mandatory. And there's no argument there. Like you can play leagues without going Kandarin, don't get me wrong. But I think deliberately skipping Occult and skipping Tormented Bracelet, you're leaving like 15% damage on the table. That's a mistake. Or at least it's a grief. So don't do that. Then a combination that's interesting is Fremenic plus Desert, as it gives the Magus Ring, which is 100% worth it. And then Ruinous Prayer is interesting because it gives you plus 4% magic damage. No prayer in the game does this. In case you don't know, Augury doesn't increase your max hit. It only increases your accuracy. Oh, I think I have something messed up again. I think this is the sheet I should have been talking about. I am so sorry. Kandarin, where are we? In purple, Virtus plus the Saturated Heart plus the Magus Ring is probably equal in terms of DPS to Ancestral Augury and Thralls. You can calc this. I also, I haven't calced this, but it's just like if you really think about it. So Virtus gives plus 3%. Ancestral gives plus 6%. That sounds like a significant difference. It actually is, but then the Saturated Heart gives visible levels, and visible levels increases the max hit of Trident, Tumakin, blah, blah, blah. Powered staves, basically. And I think those visible levels the visible levels are enough to bridge the 3% gap between Virtus and Ancestrals. And then the Magus Ring gives another 2%. And then I'm saying, well, probably Thralls are only about a 2% increase in DPS in leagues, because there's nothing that really buffs the Thralls. You're going to be running around with up to a 40 DPS, right? That's a whole lot. I don't think Thralls are going to be that interesting, to be honest. Okay, Tome of Fire, just above the green line. Tome of Fire is good, but it doesn't blow anything out of the water in terms of DPS. I have calced this. However, I only calced it against one enemy. And the Trident of the Seas actually kept up with the Tome of Fire and a Harm Staff. That said, if you want to go Coherent and you can get your hands on the Tome of Fire, blowing things up with Fire Surge is pretty good, actually. It's not bad. However, if you go Kandarin, you have a Trident, you don't need to go Corinne for a Tome of Fire either. So, that's basically the way to approach this. And then in green, the most interesting thing that I could find is that the Tumakin is absolutely crazy DPS. There is no other magic weapon that comes close. I've tested, I've calced actually the Sang, Trident of the Swamp, Nightmare Staves. Nothing comes close to the Tumakin. It is too good. It is super strong. And the only weapons that do come close are like the Scythe and the Soul Reaper. And then lastly, people have been talking about the Accursed Scepter. It drains 15% magic defenses and acts like a magic Dragon Warhammer. However, this clashes with the Ruinous Prayer vow. And if you are going Ruinous Prayers, and I think you should, then Accursed Scepter is arguably worthless. Keep in mind, though, that Wilderness gives you a God Cape still, so doesn't mean that the Wilderness is useless. It's just that the Accursed Scepter becomes useless. Okay? So, how to approach the magic routes? Kandarin is included in all of my routes. Very simple. Then from there, you either pick Desert or Coherent, because you either want Verdus or Ancestral, or both. But either Verdus or Ancestral. This is the armor that you want, basically. So Kandarin is a must for the Occult and the Bracelet. Then you have Desert or Coherent as a must because of the armor. And then you can go... I think the absolutely best route is Kandarin Desert Fremonic, because it gives you the Magus Ring and the Saturated Heart. I would seriously consider the Wilderness if you're not going Ruinous. It gives you the God Cape and the Accursed Scepter, which is a pretty good spec weapon. But keep in mind, though, you cannot spec the same mob twice with the Accursed Scepter, because you can only drain 15% magic defense. And if you hit your spec, and you probably will in leagues, you immediately drain 15% and it doesn't stack. So you only need to spec it once. So Accursed Scepter in combination with Weapon Master is not a thing. And if for some reason you don't want to go Fremonic and you don't want to go Wilderness, you pretty much have a free pick, because Kandarin gives you Trident, Desert gives you Tumakin, and from there you can go anywhere. If you are considering Coherent, then that's probably your best pick out of the free picks, because Coherent gives you Thralls, basically. And theoretically, in certain situations, Ancestral is slightly higher DPS than Verdus, and in other situations, such as where you're using Ancient Magics, Verdus is higher DPS than Ancestral. So if you go Kandarin, Desert, Coherent, you basically have everything. Just everything, right? So you can't go wrong if you do that either. Then, if you don't want to go Desert, you have Kandarin Coherent, and now you're playing with an Occult, Bracelet, Ancestral, and Thralls. From here, I'm going to say it again, the Desert is still relevant because the Tumakin damage is just insane. But if you really don't want to go Desert, I would consider Mauritania for a Sang. Also keep in mind that if you go Mauritania, you open up a Slayer helmet, which is imbued via Kandarin, and that's actually not bad either. So Kandarin Kandarin Mory is a very valid route too, right? And if you really don't want to go Desert or Mory, you can still probably go anywhere. It's just fine. Although you do have to think about which weapon you're going to use, because I think Kandarin only gives you a Trident, and I mean the Trident is going to be enough for you to clear any content in leagues. It's just that I would probably look for something more flashy after the Trident. And the Tumakin is like the logical answer to that. Okay, finally, we are nearing the end after 2 hours. I'm sorry it took so long, but I promise not to take much more. After this, there is nothing worth of interest to you, so if you just want to click away, by all means. I'll just show you, right? So this is the last sheet. This is like my YouTube channel future. I want to talk about it, and this is what am I going to do. So if you don't want to hear it, just click away. It's fine. I don't blame you after 2 hours of listening. What am I going to do? I thought melee would be super lame. However, 5-tick weapons becoming 2-tick made me eyeball melee again. I am still thinking about going magic. Tumakin is looking insane, but I really don't want to grind Tombs of a Mascot. I've been grinding it in the main game. I've got over 100 KC. I don't like it because I don't actually enjoy PVM all that much. At the same time though, I am starting to get pretty good at butterflying and red Xing Baba. So at the same time, I could grind Toa in Leagues. I don't know. I don't feel like doing it in Leagues. That's the short answer. So Magic, I think, is going off the table. I'm not sure. I also considered, I mentioned this in a previous video, that I wanted to learn Chambers. However, I'm leaning towards playing for Dragon Cup this time around. And I really want to get a Dragon Cup in Leagues 4. This makes me want to look at Asgarnia and Fremennik some more, and that basically means that I can get a Soul Reaper route in there, or a ranged route. And because Melee and Asgarnia also both skip Kandarin, and Kandarin is the place I don't want to be because of the Apatol lapse, and I'm playing for points, Melee and ranged are actually very enticing. So Tumakin, as I said already, it's insane DPS. Soul Reaper and Scythe are up there. I think I'll have enough fun. I am not feeling the Zenyte crossbow. I don't know why. I am just not feeling it. So as much as I initially didn't want to pick melee, as meleeers are super lame. You know, I've been playing this game for 6 years. I'm maxed in the main game. I've meleeed enough, I can tell you. Meleeing in leagues, probably lame. But at the same time, like for instance, when I didn't know Fire Sale was a thing, I considered going Magic because you save 90% of the runes. Now that I am probably picking Fire Sale, I have infinite runes. The 90% rune save is now worthless to me, so melee becomes interesting. So I think I am probably going to shoot for a Soul Reaper or a Scythe. I have been looking this up. I am now convinced that soloing Theater of Blood is very possible. So I'm really looking to get my hands on the Scythe, and I think from there, like, it's going to be insanely fun. So it's probably going to be something like Asgarnia, maybe Fremennik for a Soul Reaper, and then I would have to go Desert. So Asgarnia, Fremennik Desert is my Soul Reaper route, or alternatively something including Mauritania. And then from there, I think I can pick anything. I would have to look at my own video again to see what I can do with just Mauritania. If I would go Mauritania, I would probably still pick, what's it called? Asgarnia. So I want to go, maybe if I want to play with a Scythe, I still would go Asgarnia for both points and Torva. And now I'm running around in full Torva and a Scythe. Something like that. If I get there, at least. Maybe I'll burn out in 3 weeks. Who knows? Either way, good luck deciding. Like, seriously, good luck. I know it's super difficult. Some people just are able to pick something and stick with it. I know that the second I hit tier 4 and I pick my preferred relic, I'm going to get buyer's remorse. I know that. So that's why I'm making these videos. I'm not making these videos for you. I'm making them for myself. That's a joke, actually. Why is it a joke? Because I've gotten more views on my Leagues videos than I could have ever dreamt. I was completely surprised by the amount of views that I got. So I've got some other videos, some shitty videos I've done before, like a piss poor attempt at content creation. And I uploaded the first version of my Leagues deep dive, and it got like over 1,000 views in 24 hours, which is something I've never experienced before. That was super exciting, and thank you guys for that. Like seriously, thank you. That makes me feel appreciated. Like some comments don't make me feel appreciated, I'll be honest, but generally the response has been very positive, and like a sincere thank you. So now Leagues has started. We are about 2 hours after the official release of Leagues. I don't know if there has been a rollback already. I've played RuneScape enough to know Jagex, so who knows. I am going to log in, get my hands on a fishing net and start fishing probably, because I still have some work to do, as in a literal job, Omega Lul. I still need to do some things for my actual job IRL, so I'm gonna AFK on the side. So I won't be running through the stronghold for 10k. I'm gonna be fishing and try to find something at least that's AFK. Maybe I should pick Eternal Harvest, actually, come to think of it. No, that's a joke. I'm not picking Eternal Harvest. As for the future of this channel, I am not exactly sure what to do. I created some videos before, like I just said. I'm not going to do that. Ideas are very welcome. So I thought to myself, I can like compile the first hour of Leagues, but at the same time, all of you that are watching are probably playing Leagues, so you don't want to see me playing Leagues, I don't think. So who knows? Maybe I'll compile some highlights, you know, when I finally get that Soul Reaper axe or the scythe, and, you know, something like that. I literally don't know. Either way, it's been 2 hours and 6 minutes. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the subscribers. And especially a big thanks if you watched the entire thing. Let me know in the comments if I made any mistakes. That's actually a very relevant thing to say. And make sure to read the description, read the comments, because if I make any mistakes, I'm going to either update the description, or some people are going to point it out, I mean, in the comments. So thank you once more, and bye-bye.